Over the next decade, global economic growth won't be constrained by a lack of capital, computing power, or hardware. The primary bottleneck is human capability. We are building advanced digital systems faster than we can train people to operate them. The World Economic Forum's 2025 Future of Jobs report measures the exact scale of this friction. They project that by 2030, nearly a quarter of all current jobs, 22%, will either completely disappear or require total revision. Globally, this translates to 92 million roles being eliminated. At the same time, shifting trends in artificial intelligence, big data, and the green transition are expected to create 170 million entirely new occupations. To understand the severity, if the global workforce is represented by exactly 100 people, 59 will require targeted reskilling by 2030 to remain employable. Within that group, 11 workers are highly unlikely to receive needed training, putting them at immediate risk of redundancy. In the Forum's survey, 63% of employers cited the skills gap as the single greatest barrier to transformation. Without these workers, the infrastructure goals of the coming decade lack the human capacity required for implementation. To engineer a coordinated response to this labor deficit, it became a central focus at the 2025 World Economic Forum in Davos. Forum Managing Director Sadia Zahidi argues a massive global investment in human capital is now required to revive social mobility and prevent severe economic inequality. The Forum's mandate is an initiative called the Reskilling Revolution. The objective is to mobilize both public and private sectors to provide 1 billion people with updated education, skills, and economic opportunities by 2030. This requires a dual-track approach to training. Workers must acquire strict technological literacy in fields like cybersecurity and big data, while simultaneously developing core human skills like cognitive agility, resilience, and complex collaboration. This initiative is driven by strict financial necessity rather than corporate altruism. If labor markets fail to adapt to these evolving business needs, G20 countries risk losing $11.5 trillion in potential GDP growth over the next 10 years. This creates a rigid timeline for individual nations to overhaul their talent systems. Those who fail to update their workforces by 2030 risk falling into a state of long-term economic irrelevance as global demand shifts toward higher-skilled industries. To capture the value of this global technological disruption, individual governments are aggressively rewriting their domestic policies. The United Kingdom provides a clear case study of this transition. The Chancellor's modern industrial strategy narrows the focus of state support. Instead of broad, uniform economic stimulation, the government is concentrating its intervention on a specific list of high-potential industries. These are the IS8, 8 growth-driving sectors including advanced manufacturing, life sciences, and digital technologies. They will receive the majority of the UK's capital, research funding, and regulatory focus through 2035. This chart maps out the economic ambition. Right now, these 8 sectors represent 32% of the UK economy. If properly supported, the government projects their trajectory will add an extra £152 billion in gross value added to the economy annually by 2035. Translating this financial growth back to human capital, expanding these frontier industries is expected to generate 1.1 million new roles. We can see this taking physical shape in the clean energy sector, with the government confirming sites like Wylfa in North Wales for a new generation of small modular nuclear reactors. The UK is directing its resources toward a small group of highly specialized, technologically advanced industries to secure its competitive position in the global market. These 8 sectors cannot scale to these targets in a vacuum. They require a stabilized domestic environment to successfully attract internationally mobile private capital. The government's corporate tax roadmap is designed to ease the financial burden on these businesses, committing to cap the headline corporation tax rate at 25%, while maintaining generous research and development reliefs. Beyond tax structures, the strategy relies heavily on a bedrock of what the government calls foundational industries. Frontier technology requires heavy physical infrastructure to operate. This includes global logistics networks and major ports handling critical inputs. It also requires continuous raw material production, like domestic steel and chemical manufacturing, to supply advanced manufacturing pipelines. Even the defense sector plays a dual role here, serving as both a high-growth IS-8 engine for export and a foundational necessity for economic security. The government has engineered a precise, globally competitive macroeconomic blueprint. But a blueprint is entirely dependent on the quality, availability, and willingness of the domestic workforce actually hired to build it. The IS-8 strategy requires an expanding, technically optimized workforce. However, the latest labor statistics show a domestic market moving in the opposite direction. This chart tracks the UK unemployment rate, climbing to 5.2% by early 2026. That translates to 1.87 million people actively out of work. But standard unemployment only measures people looking for work. Visualizing economic inactivity reveals 9 million working-age people entirely detached. The data shows that a significant portion of this inactivity is driven by individuals suffering from long-term sickness, alongside a notable rise in detachment among mid-career workers, aged 35 to 49. This mid-career displacement directly mirrors the World Economic Forum's warnings. As traditional mid-level roles become obsolete due to automation, barriers to re-entry rise, forcing displaced workers out of the system entirely. The specialized industries of the 2030s require a deep talent pool, yet millions of potential workers are currently detaching from the labor market entirely. The most critical variable for a 10-year industrial strategy is the demographic entering the workforce right now. The youth of today are meant to fill those 1.1 million new IS-8 roles by 2035. While the national unemployment average sits at 5.2%, unemployment for young people aged 16 to 24 has surged to 16%. Economists track this at-risk segment via the NEAT metric, not in education, employment, or training. That translates to 872,000 sidelined young individuals. Failing to integrate this specific demographic carries a severe penalty. Estimates suggest that bringing the UK's NEAT rate down to match leading European peers could increase long-term GDP by £69 billion. This right here is the macroeconomic catch-22. The government has drafted a $1 trillion frontier economy for 2035, but the generation required to build it is currently sidelined and untrained. The IS-8 strategy cannot survive on corporate tax roadmaps and capital investment alone. Unless the government successfully executes the World Economic Forum's mandate for a reskilling revolution on a domestic level to mobilize this inactive youth, the 2035 blueprint will fail before it begins.